The knock on my door came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd just sat down to watch the news before starting dinner. My wife Lauren was at her book club, or so she'd said, and I was enjoying a quiet evening at home. When I opened the door, Mrs. Patricia from next door was standing there, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen her. She was 72, a widow who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades. She always had a kind word and a smile, the type of neighbor who made the whole street feel friendlier. But tonight, she looked distressed. In her hands was a thick manila envelope. "I'm so sorry to bother you, dear," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "but I need to show you something. Can I call me? This isn't easy for me, but I can't keep this to myself anymore." I let her in, confused and a bit worried. Was something wrong with her? Did she need help? We sat at my kitchen table. Mrs. Patricia placed the envelope between us and took a deep breath. "Michael, what I'm about to show you is going to be very upsetting. I've been struggling for weeks about whether to tell you, but I finally decided that if I were in your position, I'd want to know." She slid the envelope toward me. "I'm so sorry." I opened it and pulled out a stack of photographs. The first one showed my house, my front door, specifically. In the photo, Lauren was opening the door, and standing on our porch was a man I'd never seen before. I looked up at Mrs. Patricia, confused. "Who is this?" "Keep looking," she said quietly. "They're in chronological order. I've dated and time-stamped each one." I went through the photos slowly, my confusion turning to dread and then to devastation. Each photo was taken from Mrs. Patricia's living room window, which had a clear view of my front door. Each one had a date and time written on the back in neat handwriting. The photos told a clear story. Lauren opening the door to the same man, the man entering our house. Hours later, the man leaving. This pattern repeated over and over, different dates and times, but always during the day when I was at work. There were dozens of photos. I flipped through them, my hands starting to shake. May 15th, 10:47 a.m., May 22nd to 15 p.m., June 3rd, 11:30 a.m., June 10th, 1 p.m. The dates went on and on. Some photos showed them standing close together on the porch. In one, his hand was on her lower back. In another, they were laughing together. One photo showed them kissing goodbye at the door. The most recent photo was dated just 3 days ago. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Patricia looked down at her hands. "The first photo is from February 14th, 6 months ago. I'm so sorry, Michael. I should have told you sooner, but I kept hoping I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation. But it kept happening, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. 6 months. My wife had been bringing another man into our home for 6 months, and I'd had no idea. My name is Michael, and until that moment, I'd thought I had a great marriage. Lauren and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. We'd met at a mutual friend's party, connected instantly, and built what I thought was a strong, loving relationship. Lauren was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home most days. I was an accountant at a mid-sized firm. Regular office hours, 8 to 5. We'd bought our house 3 years ago in this quiet suburban neighborhood. It was our dream home, 3 bedrooms, nice yard, great neighbors like Mrs. Patricia. Our life seemed perfect. We had date nights every week, took vacations together, talked about starting a family soon. Lauren was affectionate. We laughed together. We supported each other's careers. There were no red flags that I could see, no signs that she was unhappy or looking for something outside our marriage. Or maybe there were signs, and I just didn't want to see them. "Tell me everything," I said to Mrs. Patricia, still holding the photos. "From the beginning." She sighed deeply. "It started in February. I was home, as I usually am, sitting in my living room by the window. I like to watch the birds at my feeder and keep an eye on the neighborhood. That's when I first saw him arrive." She explained that she'd noticed a car she didn't recognize pull up in front of my house. "A man got out and walked up to my door," Lauren answered, "and they hagged the familiar hug, not the greeting of strangers. At first, I thought maybe it was a relative or an old friend," Mrs. Patricia said. "But then I saw them kiss. Not a friendly kiss, a romantic kiss, and he went inside." She'd been shocked and didn't know what to do. She waited watching and saw the man leave 3 hours later. She told herself it might have been a one-time thing, maybe a moment of weakness that Lauren would regret. But then he came back a week later, and then again and again. "I started keeping track," Mrs. Patricia admitted. "I know it seems like I was spying, And maybe I was. But I felt like I needed to know if this was really happening or if I was imagining things. So I started taking photos. She explained that she'd used her late husband's old camera with a zoom lens. From her living room window, she could see my front door clearly. She started documenting every visit, the man's arrival time, how long he stayed, when he left. I kept telling myself I should tell you, she said, tears in her eyes. But I didn't know how. How do you tell someone something like that? What if I was wrong? What if there was an explanation? I kept hoping the affair would end on its own, that I wouldn't have to get involved, but it didn't end. It kept happening, week after week, month after month. Finally, Mrs. Patricia's conscience wouldn't let her stay silent anymore. I couldn't watch you wave goodbye to Lauren every morning, knowing what she was doing while you were gone, she said. I couldn't smile and chat with you about the weather, keeping this secret. It was eating me alive. So tonight, I finally found the courage to tell you. I'm so sorry, Michael. Sitting at my kitchen table with Mrs. Patricia's photos spread out in front of me. I started connecting dots I should have noticed before. Lauren's work schedule had changed earlier this year. She'd started taking on more clients, she said, and needed to be available during the day for video calls and meetings. She'd asked me not to disturb her during work hours, said she needed to focus. I'd been proud of her growing business. I never questioned it. She'd also started being very particular about when I came home for lunch. In the past, I'd occasionally surprised her by coming home midday, but starting around February, right when these photos began, she'd told me she preferred I didn't do that anymore. It breaks my concentration, she'd said. I'd been understanding I'd stopped coming home during the day. Looking at the timestamps on Mrs. Patricia's photos, I saw the pattern. The man usually arrived between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. He'd stay for 2 to 4 hours. Then he'd leave, giving Lauren plenty of time to clean up any evidence before I got home at 5:30. It was all so calculated, so carefully planned. Do you know who he is? I asked Mrs. Pachito. She shook her head. I've never seen him before, and I don't recognize his car. But I wrote down his license plate number if you want to try to find out. She handed me a small note card with a license plate number written on it. Even in her distress about spying on my wife's affair, Mrs. Patricia had thought like a detective. Lauren's book club usually ended around 9 p.m. I had about 2 hours to figure out what to do. Mrs. Patricia offered to stay with me, but I told her I needed to handle this alone. She hugged me at the door, apologized again, and went back to her house. I sat at the kitchen table with the photos spread out in front of me, trying to process everything. My wife had been cheating on me for 6 months in our home, in our bed, probably, while I was at work, trusting her completely. I thought about confronting her as soon as she walked in, but something made me wait. I wanted to see if she'd tell me the truth voluntarily, or if she'd lie to my face again. When Lauren came home at 9:15, she was in a great mood. Hey, babe, she called out, setting her purse down. Book club was so good tonight. We were reading this amazing thriller that she stopped when she saw my face. What's wrong? How was book club? I asked, my voice flat. It was good. I just said, why? What's going on? I'm giving you a chance to be honest with me. Lauren, how was your day today? She looked confused. Fine. I worked on that logo design for the coffee shop client, took a lunch break, worked some more. Normal day. Michael, you're scaring me. What's this about? She was lying so convincingly. If I didn't have Mrs. Patricia's photos, I would have believed her completely. One more time, I said, is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all? No, she said, her confusion turning to irritation. Michael, what is going on? Why are you interrogating me? I stood up and turned on the kitchen light, illuminating the table covered with photographs. Mrs. Patricia came by earlier. Lauren went pale, her eyes fixed on the photos, and I watched her face cycle through shock, fear, and then resignation. Michael, I can explain? Explain what? I interrupted. Explain the 6 months of bringing another man into our house. Explain the lies. Explain why our sweet elderly neighbor felt obligated to document your affair because her conscience wouldn't let her watch me be made a fool of. It's not what it looks like. She started. But even she knew how hollow that sounded. Lauren, there are dozens of photos here, dated timestamped. I can see you kissing him goodbye. Don't insult me by saying it's not what it looks like. She sank into a chair, her head in her hands. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Who is he? His name is David. We met online on a design forum. We started chatting about work, and it developed into more. How much more? She was crying now. We've been seeing each other since February. He'd come over during the day when you were at work. Michael, I'm so sorry. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did hurt me, I said. Every single day for 6 months. You hurt me. You lied to me. You brought him into our home, into our bed. You looked me in the eye and lied about your day, about your work, about everything. I know, she sobbed. I know I did. I don't know what I was thinking. I was stupid and selfish. And why? I demanded. Why did you do this? Was I not enough? Were you unhappy? No, you're wonderful. You're a great husband. It wasn't about you. Then what was it about? She struggled to answer, I don't know, excitement, attention, something new. I love you, Michael. But things had gotten so routine. David made me feel alive. It was wrong. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. You couldn't stop, or you didn't want to stop. She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. I didn't yell or throw things. I just asked Lauren to leave, to pack a bag and stay somewhere else while I figured out what came next. She tried to argue, tried to convince me to let her stay so we could work through this, but I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her. She packed a bag and left around midnight, still crying, still apologizing. I sat alone in our house, a house that no longer felt like home, surrounded by Mrs. Patricia's photos. The next morning, I knocked on Mrs. Patricia's door. She answered in her bathrobe, looking like she hadn't slept well either. How are you doing, dear? She asked, concern etched on her face. I've been better, I admitted, but I wanted to thank you for telling me. I know it wasn't easy. She invited me in for coffee, and we talked for over an hour. She told me more details about what she'd witnessed, answered questions I had about the timeline, and apologized repeatedly for not telling me sooner. I kept thinking it wasn't my place, she said, that I should mind my own business. But my late husband always said that good neighbors look out for each other, and I couldn't look out for you by staying silent. You did the right thing, I assured her. I'm grateful, even though it hurts. She'd actually been sick with worry about telling me. She'd lost sleep, agonized over the decision, and finally decided that she'd want someone to tell her if the roles were reversed. My husband and I were married for 47 years, she said. We had our struggles, but we were faithful to each other. Marriage means something. Vows mean something. What Lauren did, it's not right. And you deserve to know. I decided I needed to know everything. I hired a private investigator to find out who David was and how serious the affair had been. Using the license plate number Mrs. Patricia had provided, the investigator tracked him down quickly. David Turner, 35, divorced, worked in IT at a company about 20 miles away. He lived in an apartment across town. According to the investigator, David had been married before and his wife had divorced him for, guess what, cheating. So Lauren had been having an affair with a known cheater that somehow made it worse. The investigator also found evidence that the affair was more serious than Lauren had admitted. They'd been emailing and texting constantly. They'd met in person more times than just at our house. There were hotel visits, restaurants, a weekend trip to a nearby city that Lauren had told me was a girls' spa weekend. The lies ran deep. Almost nothing Lauren had told me about her schedule over the past 6 months had been true. The divorce was messy. Lauren wanted to try counseling, wanted another chance, swore she'd ended things with David and would never cheat again. But I couldn't trust her. How could she? She'd lied to me every single day for 6 months without any apparent guilt. I showed my lawyer Mrs. Patricia's photos. They were time-stamped, documented, clear evidence of adultery in our state that mattered for divorce proceedings. My lawyer said we had an excellent case. Lauren was furious about Mrs. Patricia's involvement. That old woman had no right to spy on me, she said during one of our difficult conversations about the divorce. What kind of person takes photos of their neighbor like that? The kind of person who couldn't stand to watch an innocent man be betrayed. I shot back. Mrs. Patricia has more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire body. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. I got the house, which felt appropriate since Lauren had violated it by bringing David there. She moved in with David, actually, which told me how serious the affair had really been. It's been about a year since Mrs. Patricia knocked on my door with that manila envelope. A lot has changed. I still live in the same house, though I've redecorated and made it feel like mine rather than ours. Mrs. Patricia and I have become closer friends. She checks on me regularly, brings me homemade soup when I'm sick, and invites me over for coffee. She feels guilty about the whole situation, though I've told her repeatedly that she has nothing to feel guilty about. You are the only one who told me the truth, I remind her. Everyone else knew or suspected something and said nothing. You're the one who cared enough to get involved. That was another painful discovery. Several other neighbors had noticed the pattern of David's visits but hadn't said anything. They'd mentioned it to each other, gossiped about it, but no one had told me. Some people said they thought it wasn't their business. Others said they weren't sure what they were seeing. Everyone had an excuse for staying silent, but Mrs. Patricia had acted. She documented what she saw, agonized over it, and finally found the courage to tell me. She'd known I'd be hurt, but decided that short-term pain was better than long-term deception. I'm dating again, slowly and carefully. It's hard to trust after what Lauren did. Every time someone tells me where they're going or what they're doing, I find myself wondering if it's true. I'm working on that with a therapist, trying to not let Lauren's betrayal poison all my future relationships. But I'm also more cautious now. I pay attention to patterns, to inconsistencies in stories, to small lies that might indicate bigger ones. Some might call it paranoid. I call it self-protection. This experience taught me several things. First, that good neighbors really do look out for each other. Mrs. Patricia could have stayed silent, avoided the awkwardness, kept her distance from my marriage drama, but she didn't. She got involved because it was the right thing to do, even though it was uncomfortable. Second, that affairs require elaborate deception. Lauren didn't just slip up once. She constructed an entire false reality, maintaining it day after day for months. She lied about her schedule, her activities, her feelings. That kind of sustained deception takes effort and intention. Third, that people will often stay silent rather than get involved, even when they know something wrong is happening. The other neighbors who'd noticed David's visits but said nothing weren't bad people. They just didn't want the discomfort of confronting the situation. But their silence allowed the betrayal to continue. And finally, that the truth can come from unexpected sources. I'd never have guessed that my sweet elderly neighbor would be the one to expose my wife's affair. But sometimes the people watching from the sidelines see things that those in the middle miss. One evening over coffee, I asked Mrs. Patricia what had finally made her decide to tell me. "It was watching you," she said simply. "Every morning, you'd wave goodbye to Lauren, completely trusting her. Sometimes you'd bring her coffee before you left. You were such a loving husband, and she was deceiving you." I kept thinking about my late husband and how devastated I would have been if he'd betrayed me like that. I realized I'd want someone to tell me, even if it hurt. She paused, stirring her coffee. I also thought about what would happen if you found out some other way and discovered that I'd known all along. You'd feel betrayed by her and by me, by all your neighbors who stayed silent. I didn't want to be complicit in her deception. "Weren't you worried I'd be angry at you?" I asked. "Of course," she admitted. "I thought you might shoot the messenger, as they say, but I decided that was a risk worth taking. Better to potentially lose a neighbor's friendship than to watch him be made a fool of while I said nothing." Her courage impressed me. At 72, she'd risked social awkwardness and potential conflict to do what she thought was right. That's rare. Some people have asked me if I wish Mrs. Patricia had told me sooner. Would it have been better to know after 1 month instead of 6? After 1 week instead of 6 months? Honestly, I don't know. Mrs. Patricia explained that she wanted to be absolutely certain before involving herself in my marriage. She wanted documentation, proof, a pattern of behavior rather than a single incident that might have had an innocent explanation. I understand that if she'd come to me after the first time she saw David arrive, I might have believed Lauren's lies. I might have convinced myself that Mrs. Patricia was mistaken or misinterpreting what she saw. The extensive documentation she provided left no room for denial or doubt, but I also can't help wondering about those 6 months. 6 months of being lied to daily. 6 months of Lauren bringing David into our home. 6 months of me being completely oblivious while my neighbors knew or suspected what was happening. There's no good answer. Any betrayal hurts, whether you discover it after 1 week or 6 months. But I'm grateful that Mrs. Patricia told me it all, whenever she chose to do it. These days, I wave to Mrs. Patricia from my window just like she used to wave to me. We have a weekly coffee date where we talk about everything from gardening to politics to our lives. She's become more than a neighbor. She's a friend. The house doesn't feel tainted anymore. I've made it mine, filled it with new memories that don't include Lauren. I've painted walls, bought new furniture, and created a space that feels like a fresh start. I see Lauren occasionally around town. She and David are still together, which surprises some people. Apparently, their affair lost its excitement once it wasn't forbidden anymore, but they're trying to make it work. I don't wish them ill, but I also don't wish them well. They're just not my concern anymore. The experience changed me. I'm warier now, less quick to trust, more observant of inconsistencies. But I'm also more grateful for people like Mrs. Patricia, people who do the right thing even when it's hard, people who care enough to get involved, people who understand that sometimes loving your neighbor means telling them uncomfortable truths. So here's my question for all of you. If you were Mrs. Patricia, would you have told me? And if you were me, would you have wanted to know, even if it meant learning such a painful truth? Because I've thought about this a lot, and I still don't know if being told was a blessing or a curse. Maybe it was both. Let me know what you think in the comments below.